On Tuesday, September 11, 2001, 4 aircraft, 19 of them named Flight, were attacked by surprise attacks on American territory. The air defense was announced. All airfields became airfields. However, at that time, there was still a plane with a sudden power outage. The plane was named Air Force One, followed by the most powerful American man holding the fate of the entire world. The White House on the air, nothing to worry about. The safest place and the most dangerous place. The risk of attack from all sides, Andrew will be the next target. What will be the end of it? Right now, let's find out about the fate of the President Air Force One engine in the September 11th event. It was a wonderful morning. Under the gentle light of Florida, President George Bush, the 43rd highest leader of the United States, and also the most powerful man in the world at that time. He was moving on a limousine to visit an elementary school in Sarasota, a normal work trip, but no one can imagine that it has been recorded in the history of the world, like the beginning of the worst terror chain of the 21st century. At 8:46, when the president was talking about the future of the country, the senior advisor to the White House, Andrew, pointed out to him a terrible news. There was an accident in New York. A 2-engine plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. It was flight number 11, followed by 92 passengers and passengers. At first, everyone thought it was just a simple accident, and the president was still trying to keep calm. However, everything changed in just 1 minute after that. At 9:03, the second plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. It was flight number 175 of the United Airlines, followed by 65 passengers and passengers. The white dust melted, and hundreds were buried under the rubble. There was no doubt that the United States was being attacked. After the organization of an anti-aircraft conference from Buck Elementary School, the president and senior members of his class immediately moved to the airport. They had to return to Washington, D.C. We are at war. When I find the perpetrator, they will not like me being the president. Some of them have to pay. I, George Walter Bush, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. On board the Sarasota Bradenton aircraft carrier, the Air Force One, also known as Air Force One, is being prepared. It is about to perform an important mission, which affects the world's political security. It is a Boeing 747 version of the VC-25, which has been improved to serve the purpose of serving the president. It is not just a plane, but it is also a representative of the power of the American people, with a white paint layer on the body of the president's wife and the title of United States of America. Air Force One is the world's most secure chassis-designed aircraft. The aircraft is designed by the government to be able to defend high ground, thanks to the ability to generate radar muzzle and emit light to fire heat-resistant missiles. Especially, the aircraft itself can withstand pressure from a nuclear explosion. The aircraft is built with a length of 70.4 meters, a height equivalent to a 6-story building with a height of 19.4 meters, a wingspan of 59.6 meters, and a maximum speed of up to 1,051 kilometers per hour. It is capable of carrying 70 passengers and 26 crew members. Its structure is divided into 3 main floors with 2 doors in the front. The president and officials in the middle are designed with separate bedrooms, bathrooms, gym rooms, and meeting rooms. The lower floors are used to store goods, and the upper floors are specially designed for communication and management devices. The Air Force One communication system is extremely modern and extremely secure, allowing the president to run normal work when he is at a height of 13 kilometers. The aircraft has 8 different telephone lines, including 28. The interior of the aircraft is decorated like a 5-star hotel. Everything is fully equipped, including a kitchen that can serve 100 meals at the same time. In terms of health, the aircraft is designed like a small hospital. With full equipment and emergency cases, the doctor himself speed 24 hours and a variety of drugs. According to statistics, the Air Force One is the most expensive aircraft in the world, costing about $200,000 per hour of flight. Every time the Air Force One takes off its wings, it is considered to be performing a military mission. When it is not active, it will be landed at the Admiralty Air Base in Maryland, not far from the White House. That's why it's also called the White House, or Air Defense. At 9:37 a.m., during the flight to the airport, another intelligence was sent to the president. The third aircraft hit the United States. This is the Pentagon, the headquarters of the Defense Department. One part of the building collapsed and burned to the ground. Immediately, the president ordered permission to shoot any aircraft that threatened the target in Washington. The ban was announced to the entire United States. All airports are closed. Thousands of flights are required to land immediately. Security at the Sarasota-Bradenton Airport has been tightened more than ever. The Department of Defense has protected it with automatic weapons to check all those who are preparing for the Air Force One. Regardless of who that person is, whether it is the president, White House senior staff, security staff, or journalists. At 9:55 a.m., after every step is ready, the Air Force One takes off its wings. The aircraft is controlled by 3 pilots, with the main commander being the 44-year-old Captain Martin Mann. The person who is highly rated by the president with outstanding skills and the philosophy of zero-fail work never fails. When the pilot has just begun to fly, the incident has sent a shocking message. A man carrying an anti-aircraft missile is at the end of the runway. Standing in front of the pilot being attacked, Captain Martin Mann reacted very quickly. He decided not to let the plane take off in the opposite direction. Instead, let it turn its head and take off in the opposite direction. The B-747 flies up almost straight with high speed, making the people inside feel dizzy, as if they are participating in a super-speed race. At 9:59 a.m., the president's pilot has finally taken off safely. The terrorist's name at the end of the runway is determined to be a journalist with a camera in his hand. Due to the rush of time, there has been no fighter jet ordered to follow the defense of the most important American aircraft. The Air Force One is the safest and most dangerous place in the world at the same time. At this time, there is still another plane under control. It is the United Airlines number 93, carrying 44 passengers and crew. 2 F-16 fighter jets were sent to fight, but failed. According to the radar signal, it is heading straight to the White House. The pilot was evacuated from the scene. Vice President Dick Cheney, along with other senior officials, had to land on a Cold War zone. Returning to the president's flight, the Air Force One is expected to fly straight to its home base, the Andrews Air Force Base Airport near Washington, D.C. However, this plan has been changed. When flying at a height of about 30,000 feet, Dai Hong Liu contacted the crew and told them that there was a flying vehicle following them from behind. Air Force One, there's a flying vehicle behind you. It's not responding to us, and it's not showing a transponder. In order to avoid any risk of attack from the enemy, immediately the captain sent a fighter jet to the west, flying through Mexico, a field surrounded by a number of military bases. While the Air Force One was flying through Mexico, a letter was sent to the White House with a message, "Andrew is next." Andrew here is the secret of the Air Force One, and this means it will become the next target. Although equipped with combat weapons, this B-747 is not able to protect itself from an air-to-air conflict. The decision will be very dangerous if the president returns to Washington. Not sure if the threat will come from inside the plane or from above. Captain Tu Men and Colonel Win Chandler, the security director, ordered the soldiers to check the outside positions of the plane. The equipment is placed in the middle of the plane to prevent anyone from going to the president's office. In addition, Chandler also ordered the soldiers to check the aircraft to find possible bombs or dangerous weapons. 10 hours, 3 minutes. Flight number 93 has landed in a field in Pennsylvania. The passengers have fought and fought with all their might until the last minutes. Captain Tu Men gave the B-747 the highest flight a B-747 can achieve to protect the president and officials from an attack. However, this also means that the plane will have to face another difficulty. Air Force One's communication potential has been blocked, radio waves have disappeared, emails are not available, and the president is no longer able to follow the news from live broadcasts. 80 kilometers off the coast of Louisiana, at a height that almost no normal aircraft can reach, Air Force One has to face a second danger. Ground control in Houston announced that 2 unidentified aircraft were following them. Air Force One, how are there 2 of them just trailing behind you? It's over, this is how we got attacked. The pilots planned all of the aircraft's defense systems and made them speed up. However, their opponents were not easily abandoned. They also started to speed up, and when the day was getting closer, Air Force One's crew just realized that they were F-16 fighter jets. They were sent to protect the president's aircraft early in the morning from the National Army units in Houston. Air Force One, this is Cal Report. Received protection. President Bush now strongly requests to return to Washington, D.C. The capital is under threat, and the country's leader, like him, does not want to avoid it. The president wants to talk to the Americans. He wants them to see him doing his job. This idea has been taken for granted by the military. They need to ensure absolute safety with Air Force One. The president's office has become more and more tense. Officials and press on the plane do not know where they will go. Go to Washington or go somewhere else. At this time, a White House employee stepped in and said that the plane was running out of fuel. They were ready to take off in a hurry. They didn't have enough fuel to fly around the air. An officer suggested to the president to slow down to the North Pole airfield, where they spent about 45 minutes. Received the first blow of the most powerful man on the plane, Air Force One took the route to the North Pole airfield, Louisiana. 10 hours and 28 minutes, radio signals appear again. All those on the plane cannot forget that moment. There were heavy rainstorms across the Manhattan area. Nearly 2,800 people were killed in the initial attacks. Hundreds of others were injured. In the middle of the fighting aircraft, at 11 hours and 45 minutes, Air Force One landed safely. The president was immediately received on an armored car, moving to a heavily protected area with advanced communication. Half of the journalists and White House employees were forced to get off the plane. To be able to fly on the sky at another 14 o'clock, the crew requested to pump another 68,000 liters of fuel. This huge amount of fuel was taken from a fuel tank reserved for bombers. 1 hour and 38 minutes later, the fuel was full. Air Force One took off and flew back to Washington, D.C. A total of 3 F-16s took off and followed behind to do defense missions. The strange thing is that instead of heading eastward to Washington, the aircraft flew northward to Canacea, Central America. 1 hour and 44 minutes later, the Pentagon deployed 5 warships, 2 destroyers along the east coast of the United States to increase the air defense system for New York and Washington. After flying for about 45 minutes, the Air Force One began to have a low-altitude signal. This is not announced to anyone on the plane, in addition to drone personnel. It is heading to a secret location, the Orfoot, Nebraska Air Force Base, an important base. The main base of the U.S. Department of Defense is responsible for U.S. strategy surveillance and command of the National Nuclear Force. The United States has turned on combat readiness. If there is any additional attack from the outside, the world will sink into the never-before-seen nuclear volcano. With a plane full of fuel, the landing caused a huge threat. Just a little bit of rust, it will fall down and explode. The captain let the plane descend to 7,000 feet, perform a 360-degree turn to consume a part of the fuel, helping to save the landing. 2 hours and 50 minutes later, 4 planes took off and landed at the base. President George W. Bush, President Rick Chakmai, and White House Secretary Eddie Carter held a live meeting. Through calls from CIA, the name they aimed at was Al-Qaeda, the Shani Muslim terrorist organization led by Osama bin Laden. News from CNN spread across TV screens. War rages throughout the country, news constantly sent to the FAA and the military. It caused a lot of pain for the U.S. today, and even those who fought for them will have to pay for it. 4 hours and 36 minutes later, the Air Force One was able to return to the United States Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. A huge armored unit was launched, along with 3 F-16s, 4 more F-15s from Langley, and 4 F-16s from Anaheim were sent to protect the president's aircraft. The Air Force One moved at a speed of close to 1,100 kilometers per hour in the sky, followed by 11 aircraft. During this time, the intelligence news continued to be sent to the CIA. According to the collected information of a European ally, Al-Qaeda is planning a second wave of attacks. President Bush has become completely angry. He goes back on the plane and says, "We will not leave a single message to bring this country down." He needs to go back to the Capitol, give an official statement of self-defense. At 5:15 p.m., Charnwick and Kwai Tai Chin were captured by the Air Force One. The people have evacuated, but the ruins of the attack are still in the U.S. On the banks of the Potomac River, the white-headed people can see full marks of rubble from the Pentagon. The Air Force One has been very close to the base, and the defense work is getting more and more serious. The Air Force One fighter jets can be used to intercept at any time. The captain lets the plane pass through the Capitol. Go down to the center of the city. Finally, it will have to leave Washington to go to the White House. It flies la-la compared to the trees, moving in a zigzag direction to avoid ground fire. At 6:40 p.m., the Air Force One takes the final approach, under the protection of an F-15 and an F-16. At 6:55 p.m., the plane lands successfully. President George Bush is taken to the Marine One helicopter and returned to the White House. At this point, he delivered a speech in front of the entire country from the Supreme Court and spoke to the National Security Council. At this point, he delivered a speech in front of the entire country from the National Security Council. At this point, he delivered a speech in front of the entire country from the National Security Council. At this point, he delivered a speech in front of the entire country from the National Security Council. At this point, he delivered a speech in front of the entire country from the National Security Council. At this point, he delivered a speech in front of the entire country from the National Security Council.